Chris, I have no idea where he got that candid photo of me in my weekend hairdo.
Usually you're wearing a bandana over that when I see you.
That's right, with the Axl Rose hipster leather pants thing, too.
That's right.
You know me, Chris. Thank you very much, my friend. Have a good weekend.
You too.
And thanks to you at home for staying with us for the next hour. We're beginning our show tonight, actually, with a special debate edition of Debunktion Junction. Can we make the little train thing go? Can we do that? Woo! I love the little train thing. Thank you very much. All right, Debunktion Junction, what's my function? First up, Herman Cain. Herman Cain was asked during last night's debate about his assertion that American communities have the right to ban mosques if they want to. Herman Cain responded by denying he had ever said that. Here's how it went.
You said that communities have the right to ban Muslims from building mosques before you later apologized.
The first point that you raised about saying that communities have a right to ban mosques, no, that's not exactly what I said. Unfortunately, the people who helped you put that together have misquoted me.
I've been misquoted, and you don't come up with your own questions, obviously. I never said communities have a right to ban mosques. So is that true or false? Herman Cain said communities have the right to ban mosques. Is that true or is that false? That is true.
The people in the community know best, and I happen to side with the people in the community.
So you're saying any community, if they want to ban a mosque?
Yes, they have the right to do that.
Yes! Herman Cain did go on to apologize for having said that later, but there he is saying it clear as day. He said it to Chris Wallace, in fact, the same guy to whose face he denied it last night, that communities have the right to ban mosques, which of course they don't. Denying that he said it, of course, does not change the truth of what he said. All right, next up, Jon Huntsman. Jon Huntsman, Republican presidential candidate Jon Huntsman, asserted last night that the Obama administration has no high-level contact with China. Mr. Huntsman made the point in the context of China allegedly hacking into U.S. computers. Listen.
Not only have government institutions been hacked into, but private individuals have been hacked to. It's gone beyond the pale. Listen, this is also part of a dialogue that has not taken place with the Chinese. We need a strategic dialogue at the highest levels between the United States and China. That is not happening.
That is an empirical assertion from Jon Huntsman there, and that's the sort of thing you would think he would know about. It is the sort of thing that can be checked. So is it true or false that, as Jon Huntsman says, the Obama administration is not talking to China at the highest levels? That is false. As Josh Rogin at Foreign Policy noted today, quote, as Obama's former ambassador to China, Huntsman surely must know that there have already been 2 rounds of the U.S.-China Strategic Economic Dialogue, which was initiated in 2009, led by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner. In fact, Jon Huntsman himself even participated in the dialogue in Beijing in May 2010 and wrote a blog post about it where he said that Clinton and Geithner, quote, both told me they viewed the dialogue as a broad success. I couldn't agree more. So not only has this strategic dialogue that Jon Huntsman says isn't happening, not only has the strategic dialogue been ongoing, but Jon Huntsman himself has been part of that dialogue and has said it's going great. So his assertion there is false. Sticking with foreign policy for a moment, true or false, this right here is a word.
Afghanistanis
is a word. Is that true or is that false? I'm sorry, Rick Santorum, that is false. Here it is in context in case this helps.
Iran is a country that has been at war with us since 1979. Iran is a country that has killed more American men and women in uniform in Iraq and Afghanistan than the Iraqis and the Afghanisताnis have.
He first says than the Afghanistans have, then he corrects himself and says than the Afghanistanis have. Afghanistanis, not a word. Afghanistanis being outgunned by Iran in their own fake country is also frankly dubious, but we will have more on Rick Santorum in just a moment. First, though, true or false, this is a person.
General Mullen.
True or false, General Mullen is a known and relevant person in U.S. politics and policy. That is false. There may be a General Mullen somewhere, but I don't think it's who Tim Pawlenty meant when he invoked this person in this context.
I was there last summer with Governor Perry, by the way, and met with General Petraeus. He thought it would take about 2 years from last summer to have an orderly and successful wind down of our mission in Afghanistan, at least in terms of significant troop withdrawal. President Obama has accelerated that faster than either General Mullen or General Petraeus recommended.
What he means there, I think, is not General Mullen, but Admiral Mullen, as in Admiral Mike Mullen, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Admiral Mullen, as his title suggests, is a Navy admiral, not an Army general. Next up, Michelle Bachmann. Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann accused fellow Minnesotan Tim Pawlenty last night of Republican heresy on the environment. Listen.
Governor, when you were governor in Minnesota, you implemented cap and trade in our state.
Michelle Bachmann says Tim Pawlenty implemented cap and trade in Minnesota. Is that true or is that false? False. Tim Pawlenty did, in a previous political life, endorse the idea of cap and trade. Back in 2007, when he was governor, he signed a bill into law that would require a task force to recommend how the state could adopt a cap and trade system, but he did not put a cap and trade system in place in Minnesota. That, Michelle Bachmann, is false. Next up, former Utah Governor Jon Huntsman was singled out by the Fox News moderators last night as the only moderate among all of the candidates on a whole host of issues.
You supported a stimulus package in 2009. In fact, you said the Obama stimulus package was not big enough. As governor, you signed on to a regional cap and trade market. You endorsed civil unions for same-sex couples, and you served as President Obama's ambassador to China. Some people have suggested that maybe you're running for president in the wrong party.
Well, no other candidate got confronted in that way by the Fox News people last night. Is it true or is it false that Jon Huntsman is the only candidate who, on the specific issue of gay rights, voiced support for gay rights in last night's debate when he defended his record on civil unions? Jon Huntsman was the lone pro-gay rights voice among all of the Republican candidates on stage last night. Is that true or is that false? False. From an unlikely source, actually. There was an unsolicited pro-gay rights testimony in the Republican debate last night from a man named Santorum.
I don't apologize for the Iranian people being free for a long time, and now they're under a malocracy that tramples the rights of women, tramples the rights of gays, tramples the rights of people all throughout their society.
To be clear, Rick Santorum has not changed his position on whether or not he supports gay rights in America, but he did plant himself last night firmly on the side of gay rights in Iran. So that statement exists in the world now. I don't know what else to say about it. Next up, true or false, on the debate stage in Ames, Iowa, were all of the Republican candidates running for president last night. Is that true or is that false? False. When you see somebody like Newt Gingrich on the stage, you may be tempted to conclude that this was a completist view of everybody who you could conceivably think was running for president this year. But no, there were a number of real, live, declared Republican candidates for president who were not invited to participate in the debate last night. Longshot candidate Fred Karger, for example, says he watched the action on TV at Old Main, an Ames, Iowa restaurant and pub. He also blogged his responses to the debate questions on the Huffington Post website. Former Louisiana Governor Buddy Roemer, who is renting a one-bedroom apartment in Manchester, New Hampshire, while mounting his campaign. Buddy Roemer said he planned to watch from either his campaign headquarters or his apartment, and he said he would make himself available to reporters at the debate's conclusion. He said, quote, "It's kind of a non-event for me." It's true, actually. A spokesperson for former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson said that Gary Johnson would talk about the debate afterward on Fox Business Channel. Representatives of Texas Governor Rick Perry, who will officially join the race tomorrow, his representatives told NBC News that he had meetings scheduled for last night, but that he may, quote, catch up with the highlights afterwards. Also, earlier this week, the Houston Chronicle ran an article covering 13 other Texans, 13 Texans who are not Rick Perry, who are all technically running for president. They've all filed the paperwork to run. Aside from Texas Congressman Ron Paul, who was, of course, on stage last night, the other dozen Texas presidential candidates were not in attendance. So, yeah, there were lots and lots of other Republican presidential candidates who were not on stage last night. This one has to be sort of in its own category because It's a little bit strange. It's sort of on the same topic, but it's different. Here it goes. True or false? Republican congressman / presidential candidate Thaddeus McCotter was not at the debate in Iowa last night. Is that true or is that false? False. Thaddeus McCotter was actually at the debate last night. Even though Mr. McCotter was not invited to participate in the actual debate, he turned up in the so-called spin room afterwards. According to the Daily Beast, quote, Michigan Congressman Thaddeus McCotter was not allowed into the Republican debate, but somehow he wrangled a media pass and showed up to give his take on the proceedings. Speaking of media passes, true or false, the Rachel Maddow show was represented last night backstage at the Republican debate. Is that true or false? False, but I could understand why you might think otherwise, even though you might recognize NBC News producer Anthony Terrell from the Rachel Maddow show in times past, and even though you might have seen him in the post-debate spin room, there he is last night. Anthony Terrell does not work at the Rachel Maddow show anymore. Anthony has left the friendly confines of this show and our silly hijinks for the much more sober journalistic duty of covering the presidential campaign as an embed on the campaign for NBC News. So even though it looked like we were there in the spin room and everybody knows Anthony, that wasn't us anymore. All right, turning to economic policy. We all know the Republicans are driving some hard bargains on tax hikes these days, right? Even for the richest people in the country, even for corporations, which if you ask some Republicans actually are people. They just really don't like the taxes. They are feeling quite absolutist about it. Back in March, Republicans released a report on reducing the deficit and growing the economy. And a successful plan for reducing the deficit, they said, was one that would be made up of 85% spending cuts and only 15% tax increases. That's all they were willing to give in the way of tax hikes, 15%. So true or false? At last night's debate, you saw that same hardline Republican approach to spending cuts versus tax hikes like the one that we saw outlined by House Republicans earlier this year. Is that true or is that false? False. The Republicans vying for the 2012 presidential nomination, turns out, have a much, much more hardline approach to spending versus tax cuts. Watch.
Say you had a deal, a real spending cuts deal, 10-1, as Byron said, spending cuts to tax increases. Speaker, you're already shaking your head. But who on this stage would walk away from that deal? When you raise your hand, if you feel so strongly about not raising taxes, you'd walk away on the 10-1 deal. Okay. Just making sure everyone at home and everyone here knows that they all raise their hands. They're all saying that they feel so strongly about not raising taxes that a 10-1 deal they would walk away from. Confirming that.
The Republican hardline position in March was that 85-15 would be the appropriate ratio for spending cuts to tax increases. Now, not even a 10-1 deal could get the attention of a single Republican presidential candidate. Taxes, schmaxes. And finally, back to Rick Santorum.
As I told you when I traveled around Iowa, you'd see me in your hometown, but you probably wouldn't see much of me on television. So it's holding true tonight.
I understand. You have the next question.
Chance to say
you have the next.
While plaintive and sort of adorable, that was also an empirical claim from Rick Santorum. Rick Santorum said he and some of us over here on his side of the stage. Okay, here's the stage. Right, okay. Rick Santorum is actually standing next to Herman Cain. See, they're over there. And then there's everybody else. But Rick Santorum says some people over here, in other words, me and Herman Cain, are not getting to talk enough. This is quantitatively testable. We took rough word counts from the debate transcripts. And by that point in the debate, the point at which Rick Santorum raised his hand and said, hey, pick me, I haven't been able to talk. Rick Santorum, by that point, had uttered roughly 250 words in the debate. Herman Cain, standing right next to him, had gotten in roughly 528 words. Now, the average number of words per candidate for everyone on stage by that point in the debate was roughly 678 words. So I am no official Republican debate referee or anything, but I'm going to go with true on this one. And after Rick Santorum complained that people on his side of the stage weren't getting to talk enough, did it get any better? Let's consult our rough transcript word count. All right, post-complaining about it, Rick Santorum uttered approximately 1,809 words. Herman Cain, after that point, spoke roughly 846 words. The average word count for all the candidates on stage after Rick Santorum's complaint was about 1,327 words. So, we can also say that it is true that complaining pays. If you over there on that side of the stage have not gotten a chance to say a whole lot, then be charmingly cranky about it, and new opportunities to speak will suddenly present themselves, and you will equal out with the other candidates. Debunktion Junction, what's my function? I cannot wait for the next debate. Choo-choo.